I'm going to ask Tina Rothery some questions about her experiences, so sort of try to download her brain. And while we're doing that, feel free to put questions in the chat, but there will be some time after for you to ask your questions live as well, all being well. So yeah, Tina, hi, you're the star of the show, so welcome.
I hate that. There's such a burden with that, isn't there?
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to put you.
No, but you know what it is? It's just because I happen to be louder. I think that happened like that.
Well, thanks for agreeing to share your insights and your experiences with us. Yeah, we're keen to hear about what you've learned. Oh, Gina Dowding's just coming. That's nice. Good. Yeah, so Gina Dowding worked with you as well quite closely, didn't she, on Preston New Road? So yeah, it was nice to have her here, and she might want to.
Yeah, and then I worked with her when she was an MEP as well. It was amazing.
Oh, wonderful. Did you? Oh, great. I want to ask you all about that now, but that's not why we're here right now. So my first question, Tina, is can you tell us a bit about when you were growing up, or maybe once you're already fully grown up, what did you imagine the world was going to be like in 2021?
Oh, you know, I can honestly say, and this is really terrible of me, but until about 2011, I really just loved life and got on with it. You know, I didn't really think about other people's problems in the way I should. I didn't think about, I mean, I was aware that there was injustice. I was really upset about the Iraq war. And there were things I had deep concerns about. But certainly the environment was virtually not on my radar. A lot of things weren't. And I think like a lot of people, you know, you have your children, you're busy with them, you're getting on with life. And I think that's why, like, I really hate it when I see people say, well, where were you before? You know, why aren't you in the room? You know, why aren't people here protesting with us? And I think, well, the day before I was a protester, I wasn't. So the day before that, I was just you. And so why should I be mad at you for getting here? Because climate camp should be really mad at me for not arriving a decade earlier, you know? So there were certainly plenty of people already doing the hard work. I just feel like I came along really late. Maybe that's why you feel obliged once you've opened the book of it and you see what's wrong. And it's like peeling back an onion. And then I remember the first talk I ever did on fracking, for instance, it was called The Unwelcome Gift of Truth. And that was about like that once you know, you can't unknow. And then I think anyone who has any respect for another living being on the planet can't walk away at that point, because then you become obliged. And certainly as someone who's created other humans and now they're creating other humans, I feel obliged for a few generations ahead, in fact, for all generations ahead, and not just for my offspring, but for everyone's, you know. So yeah, I think when I pictured the future, I kind of hoped for a bit of that tomorrow's world, you know, individual rocket launcher thing, so you could fly around and that we'd look a bit like the Jetsons and we'd have all this wonderful stuff, until you realize it's just in the hands of the wrong people who will make it look like this. So yeah, it's nothing like I would have pictured.
So was there a particular pivotal moment then that made you think, hang on, the environment's really important?
Yeah, I suppose the first awareness of activism at all was when, you know, it was the Iraq war and things like that. And so at that stage, I started writing about what was wrong with the world, but only in poetry and the odd essay. And, you know, you just weren't achieving anything, but actual physical activism, you know, Occupy got me there. But I was there for social justice and for the fact that, you know, we bailed out the banks, and then for roughly the same amount of money we gave them, we stole off disabled people. So that seemed incredibly unjust. And I just didn't want to stand it anymore. And when I was a little kid, if things were going wrong, I used to just sit down, fold my arms and go, I'm not going anywhere. And I wouldn't move until it went right again or something changed. And that's literally what I did with Occupy. I just went, sat down and thought, I'm just going to stay here until I find a way forward that I dictate, that isn't being pushed along a road to wars. And, you know, and of course, by this stage with Occupy, I was starting to become aware of the environment. Then once you've opened that, then, oh my God, you know, it's like Pandora's box full of hell. And so I just didn't want to go anywhere or do anything until I was sure it was of my own decision and that I was acting from a point of truth. So yeah, so that's kind of how it started. And then at that point, I think you take control then. And I suppose also, I think like everybody, you feel so small and inadequate. And then once I'd sat down outside St. Paul's and just thought, I'm not going anywhere, and stayed there pretty much 3 to 4 days every week throughout the occupation, learning, just learning and emptying people's heads and finding, okay, how did you get here? What do you see? And seeing it from a million different perspectives. And, you know, by about like day 7, we all smelt a bit bad. We were all a bit hungry. It was quite chilly. We were all dressed a bit the same. And we'd be sat in circles at the General Assemblies, and you couldn't tell anyone's social status. You didn't know if they had a job or kids or what they were. We just all looked and smelt alike, and our tummies were grumbling, you know. But then you realize that the input from these people, people you'd have never heard from in any other part of your life, was so impactful. You know, I remember sitting down with a woman one evening, and she was just full of wisdom, you know. And then she got up and put her bags in her shopping trolley and resumed being, you know, one of those women who walk around London with a shopping trolley full of bags.
Wow.
And you're like, wow. And then you're knowing that there are all these quiet voices that just aren't heard. And that's what we missed out on. And we had to find a way to elevate those. I suppose that eventually played out in Nanas later on, like when you know, there was a whole generation and a whole level of voices that had never found a way to get out there into activism, you know.
Yeah, brilliant. That's great. So when did you first become aware of fracking? And yeah, what was that like?
And Fielding's in the room, and it's kind of her fault. And Pam, when I was when my sister and I were at Occupy, you know, I'd come home like whenever I'd for a few days each week to get my work done and then back down again. And then I think towards the end of Occupy, one of my trips home, there was an information sheet through about, oh, guess what? There's this great thing of natural gas coming to the area. It's brilliant. Got to bring loads of jobs. Everyone's going to be happy. It's natural gas. What could possibly go wrong? So I thought, oh, I'll have a little look at that then. Oh my God. So then I had a look, and I thought, I'm not going to go to activists to look at this first. I'm going to look at like something that's benign, like an insurance company. Like, if there's fracking in my area, can I get insured? Because that'll tell me if there's a problem with it. They have no other vested interest. So I went to towns in America where they put posts on in their local papers about fracking in their area, you know, and Australia, you know, reading mums in the local papers saying, yeah, Johnny's got the rash and the nosebleeds again and all this. And I wasn't even thinking of the impact on humans, just the environment. And then discovered that no one could get insurance, and that insurance policies had to be tailor-made. And in places like, I think it was Oklahoma, correct me if I'm wrong, and Oklahoma or Ohio, it was one of the O's, where they used to get 3 earthquakes a year, so there has never been any earthquake insurance, and suddenly they were on 3 a day. And then the cowboys came, you know, with these insurance policies that cost a fortune. They were bespoke, and you know, you were just getting stung as a community every which way once the frackers came. And that acute awareness that if fracking did come, getting rid of them was nearly impossible. They'd work their way into your community. They'd find communities that needed employment. They'd then give that employment. They'd sponsor the scout hut and the local flower competition. They'd be the good guys. I mean, here they were sponsoring our business competitions and the rugby club and kids rugby clubs. And they were making themselves the good guys who would be indispensable. And you knew by the time the bad stuff was obvious, it would be too late. Too many jobs depended on it. Too much of the community
so sinister
on that industry. So we really urgently needed to stop it before it started, because like anything, once it's on the way, it's impossible. It's got its own momentum. It's got all the laws on its side. Whereas if we could stop it before it started, we wouldn't have that. And we did. Well, I say we did. It was a combination of things that did, yeah.
So when was that? What's the date on that? What year was that?
That would be about the end of 2011, I think. I'm looking at Anne's face to see if it tells me anything. About the end of 2011, early 2012. And already, although that was it, yeah. Residents' action on farm fracking. So I'd come back to Blackpool, and my sister and I were like, we started talking about this fracking thing. And remember, we're freshly off Occupy. We're kind of all geared up. We can do this stuff now. We can change the world, you know. You've got your self-empowerment in place. And so we looked up for any local opposition, and there was this Residents' Action on Farm Fracking, and they were just one of maybe 3 groups at the time. I think there was Ribble Estuary and there was Frack Off, but so we found out they were meeting in a scout hut in Lytham, and so we went along, and we had a phone call. We spoke about it later with Anne and Pam, and we'd said to Residents' Action, "Oh, we've just come off Occupy and we'd like to come and join you." So they thought these radical activists, young folk from Occupy, were coming. We've gone along, and they're like, "Oh, it's kind of 2 grown ladies who look just like us." So, but at the time they had a real structure, you know, the treasurer, the chairman and all that. But we could kind of tell that that wasn't gonna, you know, this was too big, and it wasn't going to be something we had time to have that structure slow us down for. And then people like Anne and Pam helped to change what we were doing. And then all of a sudden we decided we needed to get out on the road, and we needed to go to the communities themselves and speak face to face, because, you know, you can read as much as you like about the subject, but it's stale and dry and difficult. But if we're there, at least there's people to answer questions and we can be more specific. So we took a really non-scary roadshow out, which was just, this is the process. You can see there are points of risk here and here to water and air, and that this could be an impact on your community. And you never really needed to overinflate it, because the damn thing was scary enough by itself. I mean, I can't understand how it landed on the table as an option. So yeah, so we started doing that, and residents' action on farm fracking, and then other people with license areas were asking us to come and talk to them or give them our information. So we were going along to those areas, but then each of those areas would then maybe form a group. And at some point you realized you couldn't control everything. And that the easiest thing to do was to say, look, actually we'll share everything we've got, but everybody's autonomous. It's not one anti-fracking group. It's a multitude of groups. And each group then, which worked out really well, because we got that diversity of approach. So groups that were more affluent would spend the money on science and lawyers and information and share that. Groups that were more feisty would set up blockades and become part of that sort of side of things. So you had this rich network of diverse people in all sorts of areas of the country, and it just grew really well, you know?
Because on the face of it, it looks like it was principally a group of women called nanas, but of course that's not all there was to it. So that's like the face of the campaign, would you say? And how did that come about?
I think it was never intentional. I'd love to say, because sometimes you can look at things with hindsight and go, wow, yeah, we really planned that to do this and to give it this and do that, but we didn't. Every single thing we ever did was a knee-jerk reaction to the moment or the need of it. And the nanas came about because, and I think it was Ange and Bex, we were talking about how, like, we were treated at protest. And, you know, that why, you know, and on my TV, whenever I was doing media, it would say Tina Rothery, climate campaigner, eco warrior, you know, and I thought, you know, I'm just none of those things. I felt like a fraud, you know, I'd hardly been at the environment. And I also wanted them to know that I wasn't that person. I was just a really worried grandma. Anyway, Bex came up with some amazing artwork. Ange came up with some amazing chants. A group of us got together and decided we'd take the field in 2014. And I think the only reason the nanas got recognized is, as you can imagine, for the press, this is a decade-long fight that went on. And if you're just picturing people who are angry at the side of a road, frowning with angry signs, nobody really wants to join you. And I think my sister Julie started with the smile and wave, you know, get people to engage with us. And then we went with the nana thing and and honestly, the difference, I can't begin to tell you, Alison, you've had dealings with the police. So the day before I was a nana, I was just a regular activist, up for the grabbing and shoving and doing. We took the field and we went up to the gates where the police came, and they were like, oh, you all right, love? We're like, you're kidding me. I tied a yellow scarf on my head and I'm wearing a taban, and suddenly I'm as sweet as pie, you know?
Isn't that interesting?
So we played on that.
Yeah.
But it wasn't.
That sounds like it was an accidental tactic that was really successful by the sounds of it.
It was helpful to getting people to relate to the movement as being human and something they could watch. Because, like, if it says climate campaigner or eco warrior, if you're not in that world and you're watching the news, you're like, nah, it's not me. Whereas if it's Nana, you know, what the hell's a Nana doing on the telly? You know, it gave it, and we didn't realize it would do that, but it was brilliant. It was horrible to take almost too much credit, because really we were just pretty in yellow and got photographed, and people gave us microphones to speak into, and that was really useful for the campaign. But, you know, if you wanted to say who actually really drove that, well, that was every resident who individually took it into their hands to come and be at the side of roads, or to, you know, sign the petitions, write the letters, lobby their MPs. I mean, there were people who just worked behind the scenes, but totally politically, who did amazing work and got us into places we wouldn't have got. And then certainly we on the side of the road couldn't have got us. So, yeah, we became a kind of a face, just because I think a bit like, you know, in wars, they have some comedian go out or something. There was nothing else to photograph but us and a lot of angry people in the rain trying to stop fracking, you know?
Yeah, no, your campaign was tremendously creative.
It was.
Of all, of all, of
Who
all
knew
the
that would
things,
happen?
of all the things you did, like what sort of style of protest, or what was the sort of action that you enjoyed the most, would you say?
Oh. If I had to go for the big actions, the big ones that made an impact that I felt helped, I'd name 3. That was we rode on a tank with Vivienne Westwood to declare a war on fracking at David Cameron's house.
That's
And all the
amazing.
nanas were wearing black tabards that said the oven gloves are coming off, and we had gas masks on. And we rolled up in this white tank with Vivienne Westwood at the helm. Oh, funny. It was so funny. And people were like, at the time, because activists all critique each other's work, and it was like, oh, well, why would you do that? That was just a publicity stunt. I thought, that's the point.
Yes.
Because that evening on Twitter, I read from a magazine in Japan called Nylon. And I think that's for people who work in the nylon industry or have a fetish about it. I'm not sure. Anyway, but this Nylon magazine had a big piece about the event because they all love Vivienne Westwood. So that was just perfect. It got us into places we wouldn't otherwise go. The other one was Greenpeace worked with us and set up a mock drill rig in Parliament Square. And again, I get to front this stuff, but I get up at 9 in the morning. They get up at 5 in the morning. They set the whole thing up. They had the volume of it to exactly the same volume that a drill rig would give you. So in Parliament, they could hear it, but they couldn't complain because they knew if they complained, we would say, well, that's one day. You want us to live with that forever, for years? So, and that was amazing. And they set it up like a proper drill rig, and there were all these incredible people there. And then I suppose the other one would be friends, again, Greenpeace. They put Emma Thompson and her sister Sophie and my sister and me and the nanas and Kate Stiles, and they put us all in a field to do a Great British Bake Off, a mock-up of it. It was all environmental cakes, like a wind turbine cake and a solar cake. And it was just this spoof, and it was brilliant, apart from the fact that the farmer's wife came down and sprayed us all with manure. But then it was quite funny sitting down with Emma Thompson, and we both got manure all over us, and we smelt really bad. And I was rolling a cigarette, and she said, oh, can I have one? I was like, really? Smoke rolled up cigarettes, Emma? That seems odd. And she said, no, but it'll get rid of the smell of shit. And I thought, oh, okay, that makes sense. But you know what I loved more than anything, and that I will always take away, and I can't help but having a particular love of the Wednesday women. It was in the hard weeks. We did 1,000 days at PNR.
Ooh, we've lost you, Tina. Hello. Hopefully you'll come back in a minute.
There's no end to it. It just grew, And then we decided we needed a call for calm. So we tried it. We didn't plan on doing it regularly. We thought we'll just do it and get everyone just to calm down, do a 15-minute silence. A bit like when your mum says, right, everybody shut up, take 15 minutes quiet, and then we'll get back to this. And we did it, and it was just such a joy to do. And it changed everything. And I remember, and it was so strange, we remembering the relationship we had, the police wasn't good. But I remember that it must have been the second or third time we did it, because after the first time I said, people were like, oh, let's do this again. We're like, well, maybe we'll do it in a fortnight or a month. And people were like, no, let's do this every week. So we decided to, and we did for the whole thing. So every Wednesday, the women would gather dressed in white. And it was about the second or third one, we were standing doing our silence. And someone started using a hedge trimmer behind me on one of the hedges. And one of the police ran over and said, shh, they're doing the silence. I thought, oh, wow, that's so weird. There was a real respect. And when they injuncted, and they did this big injunction, apparently the judge, we weren't there for that, the judge said that the Wednesday women were exempt from the injunction because we weren't protesting fracking. We were calling for calm each Wednesday and having that point where everybody went silent and the road was quiet for the first time all week for 15 minutes. And then we would dance and we would be there 4 hours. And if you wanted to say it was a lock on for 4 hours, that's essentially what we achieved, because we had that gate for 4 hours of dancing, singing, silence, eating, just joining up with each other. And no one else could get in while we were there.
That's really,
but it was fun to do.
Yeah. So, and you brought up injunctions. They're becoming used more and more, aren't they, in all
Yeah.
kinds of circumstances, which is really unfortunate. So that was nice that he actually gave relief to the White Wednesday women. But yeah, other than that, though, how did you find the injunction affected your protest, or sorry, your actions, your campaign?
Well, it was quite funny, actually. Jonathan Bartley was a help in this.
Right.
When the injunction, I remember when they'd taken the injunction and they were like, well, you can't cross the road, you can't be over there. And for a day or two, we stood across the road thinking, really? I can't believe it's come to this. And Jonathan Bartley joined us for it must have been one of the Green Mondays, because every Monday we had like a green gathering. And he said, oh, I think we should just all walk across. So we just did en masse. And then it was never the same again, and nothing ever changed. And we just went back and carried on. And so I think the injunction, it's difficult to get for them, and it's difficult for them to prove and make happen. So I think that also, depending on our numbers, a lot of the time it just wasn't worth messing with us, you know?
Okay, so was no one caught up in breaching the injunction then?
There were people caught up in breaching the injunction. I think there was a thing where there was a cut through fence, but literally a man's dog ran through it. He ran after it. Everyone thought we were doing a field invasion and started following. I'm like, whoa, that isn't what was intended. And people got in trouble for that. But really, the injunction was more, the hindrance with the injunction I found is that anything that we wanted to plan for inside of their lands, that we would absolutely have considered as one of our tactics, you know, to a point of occupation the other side of the fence. Once they've got that injunction, you're screwed. There's nothing you can do, because the second you do, the police can get you out. We used to be able to do it on a Section 6. You just label the space you're in, and that's it. You've got your right to be in that space, and you've claimed basically a land ownership battle. So no one can really throw you out.
Yeah.
But yeah, injunctions are a nightmare, and they're not being used to, I mean, and also it's such an abuse, isn't it? When you think, what was an injunction originally designed for? It was frequently used to keep people safe from their partners if they were aggressive. Whereas now this was to stop protest getting onto some profiteering oilmonger gas person's land. Just an abuse, just crazy.
Well, it's basically buying the law, isn't it? An injunction. You buy yourself your own little private law that's useful for you, for, like you say, to plunder and do terrible things to the environment.
I think every step of the way, you know that the law is a bought thing. It's certainly not mine. I never bumped into a law that was mine. I never bumped into justice in the courts, ever. It was never for us. And that is such an abuse, you know, that the whole court system and laws are used by profiting, but you have to have the money to do it. And if you've got the money to do it, you own the law. Yeah. And it's just ever more struggle for us.
Yeah. Did you raise a considerable amount of money for legal actions to defend yourselves, or did you take a different tack?
Some people ran a fine fund for people, because I mean, people would just accept you were going to get fined. You know, if you've got a lock on, you were going to get a fine. Oh well, that's it. So there was a fine fund that was going to that was sorted for people to help pay fines. I never raised money much. Well, I think the Nanas, we raised money and contributed to the fine fund, but we didn't raise it for like with my case, for instance, I deliberately didn't raise any money because I refused to give them any money, because I just refused to accept that they would have any off me. So I absolutely refused to give them any money. And by the time I got towards, you know, my court date, I also refused lawyers, because I've also discovered that lawyers will advise you. It's not that they're bad, but they will advise what is the least suffering for you. Yeah. So what's the least penalty I can give you? But, you know, as an activist, it's not about me or my penalty. It's about what does it achieve for the campaign and the goal. Yeah. You know, and if you're just going to go, oh, you can walk away quietly. Well, I don't bloody achieve anything. I want to show that you're abusing the court system, that you're deliberately penalizing me for something that's just absurd and trying to get 55 grand out of me. How dare you? So I refused to engage with the process. I mean, it worked, but that was just, you know, it's more luck than judgment. Yeah, my sister's in the room. Yeah, definitely more luck than judgment, because I did have to pack my bag. I was going to prison because I was in contempt of court for refusing to cooperate. So I researched style prison. People sent me lots of really handy books on how to avoid drug addiction in prison, and how to make a kettle or a hot drink out of an old tin can or something. So I learned all that stuff from a book. Oh, it's funny to think about it now, But of course, I had to say goodbye to my daughter and granddaughter that morning and assumed I would definitely be in prison for 2 weeks. There was no way I was getting out of it because I wasn't giving in. But I'd written to the judge and I'd given him the reasons. And I said, I just started the letter with, I'm going to be in your court tomorrow morning and I'm going to be really nervous and I may not remember to say these things. So I'm putting them in a note to you now. And I said that I'd seen that the press all week have been quadrilla saying it's not our issue, it's down to the judge, this contempt of court, it's not a quadrilla thing. I said, I can see that quadrilla is dumping all this at your feet, but I wouldn't be in this predicament if it wasn't for quadrilla, and I certainly wouldn't be in contempt of court. And I think that you should be in contempt of their abuse of your court and their abuse of the law. And it says very clearly on the £55,000 thing, that the charges to me, is that you may not profit or punish from any financial settlement with someone. So if you're putting a charge to someone, you mustn't be profiting or punishing with that. It must be fair. Now, 55 grand for one grandma, having occupied a field with a few others for 3 weeks, left no mess. It was a disused field. And 55 grand was totally disproportionate. And it was a total abuse of that law. So again, pointed that out to him. And do you know what? He was so affronted too, because it really had been messy. And Quadrilla weren't even sending a lawyer to that case. And then the judge said that they had to, and he made them find one like within 10 minutes. And then every time their lawyer said, no, we're not giving in, he said, you'll go and make another phone call and it's not going to turn out how you want it today. It was just brilliant. Yeah. But who knew?
and writing that letter does seem to have been made a real difference. Do you think so?
I think we get used to it, particularly as adults, with just playing the game. This is a law court. I must speak to the judge in this way. And I must say it in a legalese way, or I must play the game that you tell me. Like the lawyer that I did have, who did not want me to do that. He was very angry with me that I wouldn't just play ball. So I kind of got rid of him. And he called me afterwards and said, you were right. And I said, yeah. I said, because here's the thing. You accept that every time you're going to get me off as a littlest fine and off I go. And you solve nothing. And he said, because he'd said to me, oh, I'm much more experienced at this than you. I said, yeah, but it's not done any good, has it? We're still doing this stuff year after year. So let's try something different and just say no. And I think having 500 people outside the courtroom was an absolute bonus that really helped, because I think the judge was thinking, I'm not getting out of here alive. There's 500 people out there, because it wasn't me on trial. It was the entire anti-fracking movement. Yeah. It was like, let's see if we can use you, set an example and make you all go away. But there were 500 people who weren't going away, and they were amazing. And there were so many things planned. If I did go away, I think they were going to tip they were talking about tipping over the van. I'm like, no, don't do that. I'll be in it. And then Tigger said he'd already set up a drumming circle for the evenings outside Styles. And I'm thinking, no, my fellow inmates will hate me if you drum all night. But I did think I'm going to get one thing out of prison, because I was sure I was going. And that was I was going to find prisoners against fracking. And if I was really clever, I was going to get prison guards against fracking. If I could have walked out, but as it was, I walked out and went home, and it was just a frigging joy.
Yeah, what a relief. But brilliant ideas all the same. Yeah. But some people did go to prison, of course.
Yes.
Looked at enrich. And so, how did that, what was that like? It must have been,
it was an amazing action they did. I mean, they did 3 days as truck surfing. For anyone who doesn't know, we were, and it really was opportunism. There was, you imagine Preston New Road was a long road, and here was the fracking site, and here was Maple Farm Community Hub, where we gathered and sort of lived around that area. And then a truck pulled up near, and it came to a halt. So opportunist, strong young man, straight up on the top, there he was. And I don't mean just men, because who was it? Lola did one as well, didn't she? So, and then 2 more, and then another one. And they were there for 3 days. It was crazy. I went out like in the middle of the night, so worried about them. There was like, when you look at the front cab of a truck, it's got a slope. So one of them's on there and he's sleeping, but his legs are over. I'm thinking, you just got to drift down any time now.
Yeah.
But when they went to prison, they did what I think is the right thing to do. Yeah, it's horrible to go to prison. Nobody wants to do it. But if you're going to have to, you damn well make the most of it. You make sure we gain from that. So anything bad they do to us, win from it, You said there's something that can come of it. And they totally raised the profile. It was just a brilliant action. And I remember talking to them and they were like, I feel so guilty. We've only like done 3 days on a truck. I'm like, you did 3 days on a truck. How could you think that was inadequate? And then the time they spent in prison, they said it was really, it wasn't bad in that, you know, other inmates were saying, quick, come on, watch on the TV, there's something about fracking. And, you know, they kind of got everyone caught up in it. So, yeah.
Oh wow. Okay. Well, yeah, it certainly was very dramatic, and yes, certainly did elevate the campaign. And what do you think now? Because with this government, and I'm sure you're well aware, I mean, there's the potential risk of fracking starting up again in various places, or calling it a different name, acidification, and all those sorts of things. Like, how concerned are you?
Well, they did it about halfway through fracking. I think it was, I can't remember when. The years roll into one, don't they? So about maybe 2015, 16, they changed the definition of fracking and said, no, this isn't fracking because it uses a smidgen less water and goes a smidgen less deep. So just because they slightly changed it, it was no longer called fracking. And I remember one of the first things that got me about fracking, that I caught them in a lie, was that I didn't understand how in a lot of the press in America and Australia, it said fracking does not harm the water. I was like, how can you say that? I'm reading about Denton. I'm reading mothers with, you know, and people in Australian outback with gas burbling through their water. How can they say that and get away with it? Then I found out why and how. This is the words. They were saying that, you know, the process of extracting shale gas involves years and years and years of really doing huge amounts of damage from the build until the close, and that takes forever and it damages water, guaranteed. However, the bit where they go down and they do fracking, the bit where they fracture the shale, that doesn't directly cause any harm to water. Not directly. That minuscule part of the process for that minuscule time does not impact the water because it can't, it's happening inside the shale. Within any time at all of that will then run and it'll hit your water supplies, but that's not the point. During fracking, so I thought, wow, is that all it is? And we're just like taking that sentence and not breaking it. But then, you know, having gone to countless public meetings by the frackers, where you go, right, and I'd go up and I'd say, thinking I was going to speak to an engineer, right, can you explain this or that or the other? And they go, wow, that's a really good question. Then I realized he's a 21-year-old PR guy. He doesn't know a thing about fracking. And you go, let me note that down. Give me your email address and I'm going to reply and make sure we get the answer to that. I lost track of how many of those meetings I went to, and I never, ever got a reply because they only answer the questions they want to answer. So there were lovely residents who didn't know they were being lied to, who were being easily fooled. So it was people we needed to wake up. We couldn't stop an industry. All you could do is get lots of people with you to understand the threat and then hope they would self-activate. And they damn well did, you know. I mean, by the time we got to the end, there were 400 little groups all over the country of people that, I mean, I think I met most of them. And that's why my friend list is 5,000. But, but all of those people, and the thing was that the more we grew as a movement, the easier I slept at night, because it wasn't just me thinking, oh, what will we do? How will we do this? You knew there were all these thousands of minds thinking the same thing and also having a sleepless night. And again, back to that gift of the unwelcome gift of truth. The feeling of guilt too, because every time you did a public meeting, although you knew they needed to know this was a risk to their health and their children's health, you also look at the room at the beginning of the night that was totally happy and normal and not, you know, just everyday life. And you knew you were going to give them something that, like I said, once you know, you can't unknow. So what, are you all going to go home now and go, no, the kids are safe, those nanas will look after us? Well, you know what, we certainly couldn't. So they were going to have to mount some defense themselves of their own families. And I think that's what we ended up with. And I think that's why it was a successful. And if you talk about measuring the success, to me, I measure the campaign, not that they stopped fracking, because they really have still left the door wide open and there is still a huge amount of risk. But the success was maintaining a movement that grew over 10 years, that successfully delayed, cost of money. We interfered with supply chains. We caused delays. And it didn't matter if it was a 15-minute delay or a 3-day delay. Every delay cost some money. When we took out the cement supplier and asked them not to, that was because we knew that cement goes off within an hour. If you can't get a local guy to provide it, you're going to really struggle with your cement. And that's where it started denting. And then every night I used to go onto the shareholders site, and they had a forum, and they'd be saying, oh, it's going brilliantly up at Preston New Road. And I'd take photographs, stick them in there. I wouldn't have an argument, but I go, here's the facts. You haven't even got the drill in the ground yet. You're being lied to. And once you started putting doubt in the shareholders' minds, they were a little less, and also they were losing money anyway. But it started being that you could do an action, check the share price and see it fall. And it was just a joy. But, you know, I wanted to win. You always want to win on morals and wisdom and truth. But I've discovered you can't win on any of those things because there are heartless bastards at the top. So all you can win on is kill their income or kill their reputation. You know, impact them in ways that they care about, because they don't care what we think and they don't care about our kids, but they do care about their bottom line. They do care about having suppliers, because the suppliers that did supply up their prices. And at one point they were getting all their supplies delivered out of town and then having to employ more people to deliver from there because these people wouldn't come to the site. But how brilliant. What an excellent move that really took. And that was down to us saying, can everybody call the suppliers, be polite, but explain there's a community here that does not want this. And you are helping to harm this community. And loads of the suppliers didn't even know what it was they were doing. I mean, we kind of vaguely threatened too, just in case, which was, would you step down because it's the wrong thing to do? And by the way, if you don't, we'll think you're just as bad as the frackers. And you see what we're doing at their gates? Well, that could happen at yours too. And they said, I remember one of the Armitage, I think it was, they were supplying, I can't remember what they said, all that rubbly stuff. And they said, oh, but you can't do that. It's not just fracking we supply. You'll impact all the rest. We're like, why would we care? That's not our problem. Your company chooses to support fracking. Even if 99% of your business isn't it, get rid of the bit that doesn't matter then. And then you'll have no grief. And they did. So.
Wow. And so could we extrapolate those ideas to the whole climate and ecological crisis? And in doing so, yeah, what would that mean? So
I think none of them are original ideas. I mean, certainly supply chain disruption. We stole that from Reclaim the Power. They were amazing. They taught us how to build camps in cities and how to, you know, just more cunning than we were. We didn't have that cunning or expertise. We borrowed it from everybody, you know. And I think the lessons for the environmental movement, then yeah, go for finance. You know, there's no point in going for anything else. So, and I think supply chains is one of the easiest choices, because if you've got a supplier supplying an industry and they have other contracts, you need to make it that this one contract can affect their entire business. And therefore, why would they bother? So for them, it's small. You know, get rid of that one contract and just do without. And you make it impossible for them to find people who will supply to them. You know, and I think also another thing that's important, I think, is to make sure that you're really welcoming to newcomers and to activists or people who just got there, because there is a whole, I mean, I was terrified. And every time I arrived at Occupy, each week I went back, I literally used to go, catch my breath, and I just touched down at St. Paul's with my foot, and I would think of the fact that that was a leap of faith. I was going to fall into a place of people I didn't know, and I was going to hope I was going to stay safe and get through it. And I was scared to hell, you know, but you did it. And each time you did it, you grew stronger, and you realized how much there was to know that you didn't know. I mean, I've lived in Australia, Hong Kong, Luxembourg, Belgium, Spain, everywhere. I've lived in all sorts of places. And I thought that as a fully grown woman, I really knew all there was to know, you know. But then you realize you moved in circles. You moved in beyond there was the homeless lady with the shopping trolley who was wise. And there were, you know, older women who'd never contributed but wanted to. And what they had to contribute was brilliant, you know. So I think there was so much, and that I so often see that, you know, we become really jaded as activists, and it's very hard to go, what about bloody time you got here? No. But you know what? That's just going to slam the door. And also to do what my sister said, smile and wave, be welcoming, bring people in. And I think it's not so much that we need to build a movement. You need people to become self-empowered and to realize they can. And as I say, with the nanas, that to me was the gift that keeps on giving, is the image of Olive, you know, Olive's grandma, 21 kids, Catholic lady in her early 70s, 10 children,
Wow.
glorious woman, glorious. You know, we did the Caravan of Love lock on, so we were all locked on for a couple of days. And she just literally burst through the barricades that night and gave us all massages, which I can't begin to tell you how strange it sounded when she'd finally got into the caravan to massage the 5 who were locked on inside. And they were all male, and all you could hear was them going, the things rocking. They go, oh, that's so good, Olive. That's so good. And the police like, this is like just mad. And she was just incredible. Anyway, so, but she was quite a, I mean, although a strong woman of character and deep belief in religion, she wasn't really an activist as such. But there was a Wednesday, and the Wednesday morning rule for the women in white was, we were there till 12:30, don't mess with us, you know? And we were all dressed in white. I mean, inevitably 12:30, I'd whisk the white stuff off, be in black and be a menace all afternoon because you could. But in white, we were well behaved. And that was kind of the not a pact or an agreement, God forbid I should say that. It was an accepted known, you know, an acknowledged thing. Anyway, so 20 past 12 one day, I'm dancing in the middle of the street somewhere and everyone's all over the place. And all of a sudden, a truck starts coming towards gates from inside the compound. Now, this shouldn't happen till 12:30. And I could see it. It was a bit of a distance. It was that Olive shot across and she just stood there. And she went, no, you will not pass me. She was the only one available to blockade it. The rest of us were making our way back. So I'm literally whisking my skirt off and starting to run. And a policeman just stopped me and went, oh, my God, why are you taking that off? Because again, I didn't understand that they got what that signal meant, which is you've completely screwed this. Forget your peace and your call for calm. You're now going to get us going manic. So, but here was the cute bit. So Olive's deeply in love with Dave. Dave's deeply in love with Olive. They've been married forever. They have these 10 kids and 21 grandkids, and they're in their 70s. So she's standing there like this, you will not pass. And then I see her look over her shoulder, and I know this is her moment of self-empowerment. And she winks at Dave, who's across the road. And it was one of those moments you thought, ooh. And I remember being told by various husbands of nanas, you've really reawoken her passion. that you found your inner you know, and once you find your inner there's no containing that again. And you knew if you could just get these people to find the inner that was it. You didn't have to do anything anymore. Because I mean, I'm not good at organizing. You really needed people to self-organize or have a sister like mine who would do it all for you. But apart from
that. Yeah. Well, we've all got our own strengths. Yeah. So we perhaps should move to questions very soon. But yeah, just is there any particular tactics or strategies or memories, things that you'd like to share most of all?
I think one of the things that I didn't have faith in that turned out to be one of the best things that was ever done was Gate Camp. Now, Gate Camp looked at being a 24-hour little hut right across the way to monitor 24 hours a day.
Mm-hmm.
But at the time, we were still treading that fine balance with, let's get the residents to like us, let's try and ease our way into this and make sure that we get more people on side before they have the opportunity to go, oh, no, look, you're just criminal, you know? And when that happened, I thought, oh, I can't see how this is going to work. I can't see how we can maintain it. But oh, my God, it became vital. The information they gathered over those years, they monitored every sound, every truck movement, every license plate. They were incredible. And I know that inside Quadrilla, they were petrified of this, that they were being watched at all times. And I remember, I think it was Katrina I was with when a big convoy came in and they were all trapped inside. They weren't allowed out. And it was the middle of the night. And seeing the heartache of the people on Gate Camp that night, thinking they'd let us down because they hadn't managed to stop it. You know, that's the thing. I think everyone feels they didn't do enough ever. You know, it's never enough because you've not succeeded. And so there's a continuous drive, but that's no bad thing. You know, we need to keep on going. and we need to support each other to do that. So happy memories. Oh, I have to mention Barbara Cookson. I have never seen a woman like her. She used to walk up with like huge tea urns, and you'd be like, please let me help you. Let me put them in the cup. No, just up there. And then she'd lay down in the bell mouth in the entranceway and just read a book all day. She was just incredible, but kept everyone, she kept the, the sanitation unit clean, and she made teas and fed everyone. And oh, it was incredible. And then behind, we did United Resistance. And oh, that was so funny. I'm sorry, I'm monopolizing.
Yeah, please, no, go for it. Go for
So,
it.
okay, I have to have another favorite action. So week 1 of the United Resistance, which was 3 months, we called it, of love and defiance, where we gave 1 week of every month. Each group or theme had a week, and it was organized by Becky, Debs, and Ruth. And they set up a different, so the first week was Women's Week, then it was Music Week, it was the Northern Week, it was Unions Week, Green Week, and all these different things would happen. So Women's Week, we'd arranged on one of the days, there was so many good actions, but one of the days we decided we'd have knitting circles, and we called it a yarn on. So we got 18 of us, 3 knitting circles, so in the bell mouth, in the entranceway, put our chairs, and between each of the 3 circles in the middle was a knitting a basket full of wool. And we all had knitting needles, and we sat in our little groups. And the police thought, oh, it's probably no bother, we'll just get rid of them when the trucks come. It wasn't a Wednesday. So we were expecting to be moved out of the way. But what they hadn't realized is that the whole point of yarn on, much like a lock on, is we each had woolly handcuffs. So we were actually woolly knitted to each other already. And we'd woven the wool between all the chairs and our legs and our knitting. So I was knitting myself to the person next door and the basket. And we became like a cat had just got at your wool, And they came over, one of the cops, and he went, oh my God, we're not going to be able to move you. People will think you did this on purpose. I'm like, we called it a yarn on. What's wrong with you? Did you not get that?
That's brilliant.
Then 50 Lancashire cops turn up. We're 18 knitting nanas. And what was brilliant was we'd never had a Daily Mail article, but the next day it said, 50 Lancashire cops bear down on 18 knitting OAPs. And they were cutting us out. There was a brilliant scene where I started wrapping the wool around my neck. No reason why, I just was panicking. And then the cops had got me, and they had to throw my head back and cut with some secateurs. But of course, you can imagine that photograph, a cop with the secateur at my neck. There's a lot. They play this whole media game. We don't play it, but if you get a moment, you can use it, So yeah, so that was interesting. And it was the creativity and making it fun, and I found our crew always made it fun, It was worth, you didn't want to get up and go, the pain and suffering I'm going to get from the cops. Be like, yeah, I'm going to get that, but I'm going to stand next to Barbara Fish, and she used to bring a horse sometimes. That was.
And there's that great sense of camaraderie, isn't there? It's just makes it fun, and all the conversations and the time you spend not much happening, and it's good to fill those spaces with all those new friendships. Tina's frozen for me right now. Oh, you're back again. That was fantastic, Tina. Thank you so much. I've learned a lot, and I'm really glad I'm recording it because I want to replay it, because there's a lot of good tactics there you suggested and good actions. So I don't know if anyone would like to ask any questions. If you could use the raised hand function. Does everyone know how to do that? Or you can wave at me and I'll try to spot you. And Laura's going to look out for you as well. So does anyone want to ask a question? Unmute yourself. I'll try to identify you first. So Dave Hampton, would you like to unmute yourself and ask a question, or I can unmute you, maybe?
Thanks, Alison. Am I audible?
Yes, you are. Yes.
Yeah, and hi Tina, and thank you so much. It's just so.
You were my first media interview, in this, back in Balkan. When you called me and you got me to come on your radio show, didn't you?
Wow. I'm chuffed if it was first. No, you're amazing. The thought I had, I was watching Freddie Flintoff, the cricketer, and I don't really do cricket, but I never realised he loved Preston so much. And I know Preston's a long way up the road, but could he get enrolled? I know it's kind of done and dusted now, but have you ever spoken with him?
No, and we didn't really think. I mean, we should have. It's a great tactic to use local, people who have a name locally. because you do need to earn respect from locals. I mean, one of the things that worked for us most, I suppose, was, you know, we'd have the unions come up and people respected the unions. They were amazing. And then we get academics come. And so you've got George Monbiot or, you know, someone, or Julius Steinberger talking at the side of the road. And the police and the security guards couldn't help but go, oh my God, they're supported by clever people. They aren't just a bunch of idiots. And you really needed that. So, yeah, I mean, I totally support that. That's the great idea. And I hadn't thought about Freddie Flintoff, but I'm not very big on cricket.
Thank you. Any other questions? Can you see any, Laura?
Yeah, there's one in the chat.
Is it from Jessica?
I just want to say hello, Karen. Hi, Britta.
Jessica, would you like to ask your question? I don't know where you are.
Hi, Alison, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Yes. Would you like to ask your question?
Hi, Jessica.
Thanks very much. Hi, Tina. Hi, it's wonderful to listen to you and hear you. Thanks so much for everything you've been doing. It's just very inspiring.
Thank you.
I just wanted to ask, I mean, the situation when we heard Alex Sharma say recently that, you know, that there would be no more fracking in the UK, and that now we're hearing that there are more fracking applications being rejected or being discussed. I mean, how do we put the final nail in the coffin is my first question. And the second question is, how do we continue this with the climate, with the COP26 in the UK? How do we use the creativity and the energy that you got on Preston New Road to do something in this year, which is just so important for the climate?
It's been a hard year, I think, because, you know, with us all being locked down, it's been really hard to plan for and to work around. And I think that, you know, we spend a lot of time in the climate movement putting out little fires, you know. It's like, let's stop this nuclear, and let's stop the fracking, and let's stop the gas power plant, let's stop the incineration. And I think maybe we need to get better at speaking with one voice and stop being a divided, you know, like each of us. I mean, we do have to tackle our own particular local issues, but that one voice. And I think that, I know for me personally, because I'm so frustrated at doing what my government tells me and staying at home in my PJs for a year, that it just feels so wrong. But I'm working towards COP26. And then because of what you did, Jessica, when you put me in touch with the Namibian fight, is supporting other groups where we can across the world, because we have a power that like say Namibia, when we first spoke to Ina, you know, they didn't have many people looking at them. And whereas suddenly, like, you know, Josh Fox came along, and we came along, and Sandra Steinberger. And once you've done that, we're focused on something. You can see the power that, you know, a well-known thing can draw in the attention. For the UK fight for fracking and for all the other things that are wrong, I think that this year's COP26 really has to be the biggest thing we ever do. Partly because it may be the last chance we get to do something as massive before the tipping points. Also because we have sat through all of these COP things year in, year out, and they make promises and they sign things and they rejoice in it, and nothing changes. So I think that the one demand to bring us all together, the different ones like no nuclear, no fracking and all those things, is no, our one demand is you will act on what is decided. We will get you to act. We want to see tangible activity that actually does go some way, goes all the way to preventing, you know, the climate catastrophe we face, the lack of biodiversity, the loss of wild spaces, the loss of species. There's all this, and you know, there's this untapped thing as well, where, you know, I look at things and you have daytime telly now, we're in lockdown, and it's like save the elephant, you know, adopt a rhino, and well, you know, none of these things will live. So that untapped British love and concern of these individual things needs to perhaps be harnessed into understanding the story in the bigger picture. So steps forward, COP26. I think it's hard though, because some of the fracking licenses might get through, and because they're lying that it's not fracking. You know, we did do a demand, the Nana's put out a petition asking that COP26, in advance of that our government demands a ban on fracking, not just in the UK, but internationally. So, I mean, it's a good story to have. It'll never happen, but it's a good story to tell that we want them to do that. That it's no point in saying fracking's stopped when it hasn't, because they're going to sneak it through with acid, you know, like they won't use fracking, or they'll just send acid down, or coal steam gas burning. There's loads of other ways that they can get it through. So I don't know, all I can say is that the most that everyone needs is to have everybody else join them, and we need to stop getting stuck in our campaigns and maybe trying to do something more holistic, something bigger that says we now need to make change happen, you know, and to keep it so that people are welcome and that we grow ourselves.
Yeah, that's really had an impact on me, that idea that we have to be relatable. I think that that's such a good point, because yeah, if people feel like you say, if they see activists on screen and they don't look anything like them, etc., then yeah, they feel alienated from the process. Whereas yeah, if it's just grandmas or nanas, of course, yeah, then it makes it much more relatable.
You're holding a cup of tea, eating a slice of cake, and you've got your knitting nearby. How scary can you be?
Indeed, yeah, that's really good.
Not that they know our nanas, they're terrifying. They just look so innocent. And like I remember with Ange and Bex, like we were looking at the Australian knitting nanas, and like they really knitted. We actually didn't really, we didn't knit till much later. And even then I only pretend knitted, really, just to kill time. I was really bad at it. I used to pass it on to others to carry on for me.
Yeah.
But yeah, but it was a unifying thing. Yeah, we did the Tate wanted an exhibition of PNR. And so they put on this exhibition, they created PNR in the Tate Museum. And we went down, and I remember Ruth sitting there teaching people to knit, and somebody else, we were sitting at tables embroidering together. And, you know, just, you know, hand stitching, no one knew how to do it, but just sewing things. And the community that built around that table was the conversation. And there was a woman there with her child, and they said, oh, we've only just stopped in to see what it's all about. They stayed 5 hours, you know, because it was a learning experience. We were all learning from each other, and everyone's doing this cross-stitch stuff. And, you know, the stuff you do, you know, and I have to say that there was a lot of resistance. And certainly I'm still experiencing it from some activists that, you know, it's all power and anger and rage. And I get that. And that there is a place for that. But there is a real place for warmth and gentleness and color and arts and creativity and cheek, you know, I think, and humor. And I think the British public responds well to humor and to art. Like they put up fence panels. So Katrina and Lee went across and they tied ribbons in the most amazing images. And the artwork was incredible, you know? And so that when cars were driving by, they were like, oh, bloody hippies taking up the road. They were like, wow. I mean, that was really beautiful, you know? And you thought, and like tying ribbons. Again, don't underestimate the power of that. They hated them. And there was a day we went up and we had to spray bottles each and masks on and gloves. And 5 of us were like that. And we were going up to each knotted ribbon and spraying and acting like it was deadly. And it was just water in the thing. There was nothing in it. But then the guards wouldn't touch it. They wouldn't take down our ribbons. They were terrified. When the chocolate fudge came out and got smudged on them, then they were really off put. So yeah. One of them asked Jean, I remember, Jean is adorable. And they said to Jean, what's in those bottles? She said, to tell you the truth, dear, I don't really know. I was only told, just add your own urine, the rest is provided. And then she walked off. And they were like, there's urine on those bottles.
Yeah. Disgust can be a useful tool. Yeah.
Disgust is a very useful tool.
So there's more in the chat. Would anyone like to ask their question? Can you see anyone, Laura?
No, but there's been some breaking news during this.
Oh, please tell.
Does someone from Cumbria want to speak forward? Somebody's very happy about this. Gillian?
Gillian what?
Gillian?
Yes, I'm absolutely delighted.
What's happened?
Be delighted too. We've been campaigning here in Ambleside against this mine, and it's just been really discouraging because we expected Robert Jenrick to call it in after the first decision, and he didn't. And then it's come back now, and there was going to be a decision in June or something, and I've written letters endlessly. And I spoke at the development control meeting where they made the decision, and I can't believe this. It's absolutely great. So I just want to share my elation with everybody and with you, Tina. This
So
is
it's
my
cancelled?
campaign.
Is it cancelled, Gillian?
What?
Is it stopped? Is it a no now?
Well, Dave says so. Dave,
Wow.
do you want to say, Dave?
Have you read the
Dave
article,
Hampton.
Dave?
Breaking news.
Can I just say, before we lose Gillian, she has the honour of being one of our, well, because on the day she did her lock-on, she did a 3-generation lock-on
Wow.
at the gates. That was on our first women's walk, so there was no calm that day. But oh my God, amazing. I think it took a lot of people's breath away to see 3 generations, you know, and to know that this wasn't just a vagabond batch of, you know, like eco warriors. So my applause to you, Gillian, and your amazing family.
Yeah.
So who knows about the Cumbrian coal mine?
I think Dave Hampton. Dave, can you tell us what the article says?
Yeah, I mean, obviously a bit tentative and a bit, what's the word, cautious and all the rest of it. But
Always.
the Independent head just an hour ago says, what does it say? U-turn by Secretary of State Robert Jenrick following increasing controversy over the project. He's called it. They've called it back in. Whether that means it's over or not, but it's a step, isn't it?
It's a dent. You know, that's another thing, Dave, though, as well, is we constantly do this to ourselves. We go, oh yeah, it's probably not going to last, or it's probably this, and like when we stopped at Preston Euro, it was like, yeah, but it'll start somewhere else. But you know what? Stop, celebrate the victory.
Yeah, absolutely.
Only because of people putting in the complaint. You know, we must celebrate regularly. And like, oh, look at what we did. It's like, we did not stop fracking. There was an earthquake, but if we hadn't delayed it for 10 years, it would have been well and truly into our communities. So we should stand up and rejoice, pat ourselves on the back and say, well done us, we're amazing. But as activists, we're constantly going, it's not good enough. But then that's really off-putting, you know, and it makes it hard. You know, like to me, I think it was the everyday wins for me. You know, like the day I saw Olive do her moment of self-empowerment, that was success for me. Because every step of the way, I kept thinking, if it all went bad tomorrow, we you know, it was the worst, would we have achieved anything? But we achieved so much. We achieved this amazing community, all these, you know, individuals who were empowered, you know, and in myself, I gained a huge life-changing experience that I wouldn't be without, you know, for whatever hardships there were, every one of them was worth it for the, you know, for just the people, and just, it's been amazing, you know.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I've got a question in the chat here from someone who's not able to read it out. It's Sarah O'Brien. She's a PhD student in anthropology. And her question is, how do you balance hope and fear / despair? Oh, sorry, it moved. When you think about the climate situation versus the action you can take in response to it, do you feel hopeful? Do you feel fearful, or both? How do you channel these feelings into political action?
It's going to sound really cold because people think I'm quite friendly, but I'm not. I'm quite cold about it in that it doesn't matter. I can feel what I want to feel, but it's not going to stop a running train. So for me, this is how I did it with fracking. In my head, I had a red dot, and every decision I made on the way to reaching my goal, I decide, like, if I do this, does it get me closer to my goal, or is it going to distract me? So all of the petty infighting, is that going to distract me? I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to engage. I'm going to keep on going. But every once in a while, something would pull you to the side that was worth doing because it would enrich the way we were going or bring us more people. And I kind of have that with climate. It's a red dot. I am obliged as a human living on this earth and as a grandmother that I must do everything in my power to make sure we get the best outcome for the future generations, and even for now, for everything, and for the species, and all the wonderful things about this planet, that we really must, because in the end, our enemy is tiny. It is a 1% enemy. It's a tiny enemy with all the power and control. And so we have to, I think, put the bullseye on that, not just on Quadrilla or the coal mine or these things. Those are steps along the way. But in the end, it all narrows down to one place of responsibility. And that's the fact that we don't have a democracy. We do not have a fair government. There is no social justice. They will take 37 billion and spend it damn well how they please and not be accountable to us. This is what they can do. But that, and I read the other day, you know, how do they get away with all these lies? Well, that's part of the power, is I'm going to lie to you. You know I'm lying to you, and I've just proved my power. It just adds to the power. but it is a tiny number of people. And I think that tiny 1% back to Occupy. You know, we are the 99%. So my job, I think what ended up being my joy rather than my job was to find all the humans I could along the way and say, oh, look, quick, come. There's a place for you here. You don't have to do anything. You could sit over there, read your newspaper and drink a cup of tea, but you are bearing witness and they will do less harm to us if you're watching. Yeah. So if all you could do is keep on adding to our numbers and then looking at the 1% and saying, what hurts you? What breaks your heart? Well, what breaks your heart is not my, it's not the 9-year-old Ella who has pollution as the cause of death on her death certificate and her mother fighting still to try and get justice for that. Yeah. So they don't care about that, but you affect their supply chain and their stockholders and their reputation. That's all they care about. So you go back to that for them. But in the meantime, you take your joy, your comfort, and your successes from every human you make space for in this place,
Wow. That was super brilliant. Yeah, I don't know if we should go any further after that.
Probably not, because I've moved on from the coffee to the wine now.
I know. I
go downhill from
it. That was so inspiring and fantastic. Thank you so much. And yeah, look, I'm sure that we all got tremendous amount out of that. And as I said, I'm really looking forward to listening to this recording too, and I'll take notes. Thank you so much.
Can I just say before I go, one more thing? Singing groups. The Liverpool socialist singers and Doc Crotchet and the Raging Harmonies and the people who came up and taught us how to do percussion and they taught us how to play samba. We used to want to look, if you've got a long-term protest, you had to have things to achieve. So you had your Mondays was Greens. There was always going to be an academic talking. Wednesdays, women having jollies and fun. Fridays was all about, sort of getting into music. And then we had the No Faith in Fracking Fridays. I watched a priest doing a beautiful thing, being dragged off by the cops off his stool and everything, but he still carried on. It was amazing. Then we had Buddhist monks, but all of that isn't typical of protest. That's what you need. And you need to be growing as yourself as well to keep you invested. So I can now play an amazing samba drum. It's bigger than me, but I love it. And I can dance 3 different dances and I can sing really, really badly to a lot of songs. And all of that keeps you safe because you need to protect you and make it a commitment you can live up to.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you so much. Before we give you a round of applause, we just want to give a quick plug for some future actions. Laura, are you ready just to give a bit of information, please?
Yeah, just really quickly. I just tried to share the links in the chat, but I see only one has linked, so I'll try that again. Super thrilled to have Tina on board with GreensCAN and really hope that all of you that have shown up tonight will get on board with us too. It's a new movement and we're looking for passion and enthusiasm and new ideas to step forward. Our first action is going to be on Saturday the 10th of April. We're calling it the line in the sand action. We're drawing a line. Greens can draw a line in the sand. Like, we've had enough. Just stop right there. Stop with the destruction of nature. Stop with polluting our air. Stop funding fossil fuels. Really simple, quick, effective action. And all the details are on our website, which I shall try and send the link to again. We've got a non-violent direct action training happening on Saturday, the 20th of March. And I'm going to post that in the chat as well. There'll be 3 briefings for this action. We'll do the action and then there'll be a debriefing. And really still at the sort of formation stages. So if you have any great ideas that you've perhaps thought of this evening, inspired by listening to Tina, then please do share them. Please do co-create this with us. And thank you very much.